The silence in the auditorium was deafening as the general cut her off mid-sentence. Her outdated uniform stood out among the decorated seals, an unwelcome reminder of something buried years ago. The general's dismissal was calculated, his voice dripping with condescension as he reminded everyone she didn't belong. Then she whispered a single forgotten call sign. Something shifted in the room. One by one, every SEAL rose to their feet. A silent wall of elite warriors standing at attention, not for the general, but for her. His face drained of color as he finally understood what he had done. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If stories of quiet courage and hidden truth resonate with you, consider subscribing for more untold tales of extraordinary individuals who changed history without seeking glory. The Naval Special Warfare Command Auditorium gleamed with military precision, every surface polished to regulation standards. Flags representing each branch of service hung behind the stage, with the SEAL trident prominently displayed at center. Distinguished guests in formal military attire filled row after row, ribbons and medals creating a visual testimony of service across the audience. Lieutenant General Thaddeus Westmore dominated the podium, 3 silver stars gleaming on his shoulders. His voice carried the practiced authority of a man accustomed to command as he addressed the gathered elite. Today, we honor those who represent the very best of naval special warfare, he announced, scanning the crowd with confident assurance. Men whose documented valor and officially recognized heroism exemplify the highest standards of military excellence. The subtle emphasis on documented and officially recognized went unnoticed by most, a rhetorical flourish in an otherwise standard military address. General Westmore continued his speech, highlighting the day's honorees and the classified operations now deemed safe enough for public acknowledgement. At the back of the auditorium, standing slightly apart from the crowd, Lieutenant Commander Briar Hemlock observed the proceedings with composed detachment. Her uniform, while perfectly maintained, was noticeably outdated, the cut and insignia from nearly a decade earlier. Early 40s, her posture remained military perfect despite years of civilian life, a small scar visible near her temple, suggesting experience beyond standard service. A security officer approached, guest list in hand, confusion evident as he scanned the pages. "Ma'am, I do not see your name on the authorization roster." "Check the Spec War directive," she replied quietly. "I was ordered to attend." The officer frowned, examining an additional document before reluctantly nodding. "Very unusual protocol, ma'am, but you are cleared. Please take a seat." Hemlock remained standing, her position allowing full view of both stage and audience. Her presence, though unobtrusive, did not go unnoticed for long. "On." Stage, Master Chief Axel Rourke noticed her during a scanning of the crowd. His composure slipped momentarily, eyes widening in recognition before he controlled his expression. He leaned toward a fellow SEAL, whispering urgently, "That cannot be her. Phantom Team was lost years ago." His companion followed his gaze, similar recognition dawning. "Hemlock, I thought she was officially listed as administrative discharge." "Exactly," Rourke replied, attention now divided between the ongoing ceremony and the unexpected presence at the back of the room. General Westmore continued the proceedings, unaware of the whispers now spreading through the SEAL contingent like ripples across still water. Hemlock made no effort to draw attention, simply observing with quiet dignity as the ceremony progressed toward its primary purpose. The centerpiece of the day arrived as Senior Chief Evander Cade stepped forward to receive the Medal of Honor for actions during a classified operation. After General Westmore placed the medal around his neck, Cade approached the microphone for his acceptance remarks. "This honor belongs to my team," he began with standard humility. Then, departing from expected protocol, his gaze found Hemlock at the back of the room. "But there is someone here today who deserves recognition more than I do." General Westmore shifted uncomfortably at the unplanned deviation from script, eyes narrowing as he assessed the potential disruption. "Lieutenant Commander Hemlock," Cade continued, gesturing toward the back, "would you join me on stage?" Shocked murmurs spread through the audience as attention turned to Hemlock. After a moment of hesitation, she began moving toward the stage with measured steps. General Westmore's face transitioned rapidly from confusion to recognition to controlled anger as he stepped slightly forward, positioning himself to intercept her. "Commander," he stated firmly, This ceremony follows strict protocols. Return to your seat. Hemlock stopped, maintaining perfect composure. Senior Chief Cade invited me to speak, sir. This ceremony honors currently active SEAL teams, Commander, Westmore replied, tone sharpening with deliberate emphasis. Your presence is inappropriate. The underlying message was clear to everyone listening. She did not belong among them. The first hint of injustice hung in the air, a deliberate exclusion despite her apparent connection to those being honored. Cade attempted to intervene. Sir, with respect, you have received your honor, Senior Chief. Westmore cut him off. The schedule continues as planned. Throughout the exchange, Hemlock maintained her composure, neither challenging nor retreating. Permission to address the Assembly, General, she requested formally. Westmore's voice carried deliberate condescension as he responded. You are not on the program, Commander. Your service record does not warrant platform time at this event. The calculated humiliation landed in silence. Throughout the auditorium, subtle reactions rippled among the SEALs, shifting postures, exchanged glances, a growing tension that those with combat experience recognized as the quiet before engagement. In the uneasy silence that followed, a symbolic motif emerged. The contrast between Hemlock's weathered uniform and Westmore's pristine, metal-laden dress, blues, established a visual representation of substance versus appearance, of battlefield reality versus official narrative. The overhead lights seemed to dim slightly, the auditorium's perfect military order suddenly feeling confining rather than orderly. Several SEALs glanced toward the exits, a combat instinct awakened by the tension now filling the space. Hemlock lowered her gaze momentarily, the only indication that the public dismissal had registered at all. Then she looked directly at Westmore, her voice clear, but quiet enough that the audience leaned forward to hear. 10 years ago today, Operation Shadowfall, Darzastan, call sign, Phantom. The effect was immediate and profound. Westmore's face drained of color, files slipping from his suddenly unsteady hands to scatter across the stage. The room went completely still, the name hanging in the air like an unexploded ordnance, recognized by everyone with sufficient clearance level. The first mystery solidified in the minds of those witnessing the exchange. What had happened in Darzastan that connected this forgotten officer to an auditorium full of elite operators? Why would a mere mention of a classified operation cause such a visceral reaction in a decorated general? Master Chief Rourke was the first to break the stillness, rising slowly to his feet. Without speaking, he assumed the position of attention, perfect military bearing directed not toward General Westmore, but toward Hemlock. A second SEAL stood, then a third. Within moments, a wave of silent acknowledgement spread across the auditorium as operator after operator rose, faces impassive but intent clear. No verbal explanation, no dramatic gestures, just unified recognition that transcended rank and protocol. Return to your seats, Westmore ordered, voice faltering as he attempted to regain control. That is an order. Not a single SEAL complied, their silence more powerful than words, their stillness a form of testimony that required no elaboration. The second mystery presented itself in this unprecedented display. What could possibly inspire such unified defiance from men who had built careers on following orders? What connection existed between this woman and dozens of elite operators that would cause them to risk careers through such public insubordination? A clear division formed in the room. SEALs standing at attention versus confused officers and civilian attendees who recognized something significant was happening but could not interpret its meaning. Sir, Westmore's aide whispered urgently, should we clear the room? Westmore found himself trapped between authority and emerging truth, uncertain which path preserved more of his carefully constructed career. Commander Hemlock, he said, trying to regain command presence, you are referencing classified information inappropriately. The operation remains classified, General, Hemlock replied evenly. My existence should not be. The first revelation landed among the witnesses. Whatever happened had been deliberately hidden, along with her role in it. Something significant enough to cause every special operator in the room to break protocol simultaneously. A brief flash of memory rippled through those who had been there. Night operation, helicopter interior, faces obscured by gear and darkness. Hemlock's voice over radio, steady despite the chaos surrounding her transmission. Phantom team in position, extraction route compromised, seeking alternative. Westmore's younger voice responding with cold authority. Negative Phantom, maintain position. That is an order. With respect, sir, that is a death sentence for the team. Communication cutting out, leaving questions unanswered, but the stakes unmistakable. In the present, tension continued escalating in silent standoff. Senior Chief Cade stepped forward despite Westmore's warning glare. Lieutenant Commander Hemlock was my extraction pilot in Darzestan, he stated. When our primary recovery was shot down, she volunteered for a mission labeled unsurvivable. Senior Chief, you are breaching security protocols. Westmore cut in sharply. Cade continued regardless, loyalty to truth overriding deference to rank. 36 operators made it home that day. Official record states recovery team was lost in action. The third mystery deepened. Why would a successful rescue mission be hidden from official record? What power could erase such extraordinary service, and for what purpose? From the front row, a figure rose with deliberate slowness. Retired Admiral Lorelei Thorne, using a cane for support, approached the stage with the unmistakable authority that transcends active duty status. I believe these might be relevant to today's discussion, General, she announced, producing a sealed folder with classified markings and placing it on the podium. Declassification order signed this morning. Operation Shadowfall is no longer restricted information. Admiral Thorne, this is highly irregular, Westmore responded, barely controlled fury evident in his rigid posture. So is erasing a Medal of Honor recommendation to protect a career, Thaddeus, Thorne replied calmly. The third revelation landed with precision. Hemlock was denied recognition deliberately by someone with sufficient authority to override the military's highest honor. The SEALs began breaking their silence, offering fragments of testimony that formed a cohesive narrative. Lieutenant Orion Wade, she landed under heavy fire after our primary extract was hit. Chief Zephyr Blackwood took damage to main rotor but kept that bird flying when physics said it should not be possible. Lieutenant Commander Talon Pierce made 3 trips when the mission called for 1, refused to leave anyone behind despite direct orders to abort. A pattern emerged through their collective testimony. Extraordinary heroism systematically undocumented, achievement deliberately buried rather than celebrated. These accounts contradict official after-action reports, Westmore stated, attempting to reassert control over the narrative. Official reports can be altered, General, Hemlock responded, voice still quiet but carrying throughout the silent room. Scars cannot. With methodical movements, she removed her jacket, revealing severe scarring on her right arm and shoulder. Not theatrically, but matter-of-factly, physical evidence that could not be denied or classified away. Third extraction run, she explained simply. RPG impact, 70% fuel loss, hydraulic failure. Admiral Thorne opened the classified folder, pages clearly visible to those on stage. Medical report confirms third-degree burns over 30% of body, submitted as evidence for Medal of Honor consideration. She turned a page, revealing a document bearing Westmore's signature on the denial recommendation, his younger handwriting unmistakable beneath his current title. The recommendation was denied, Thorne stated, addressing the room rather than just Westmore. Not because the actions did not merit recognition, but because acknowledging Commander Hemlock's role would have revealed unauthorized tactical decisions. She read directly from the document. General Westmore exceeded operational authority by diverting team into unsecured sector without proper intelligence, leading directly to primary extraction loss. Looking up from the papers, she delivered the final connection. Commander Hemlock's insubordination in rejecting orders to abandon the team saved 36 lives and exposed a command failure that someone preferred to bury. All eyes turned to Westmore, whose carefully constructed narrative now lay in ruins. The weight of a decade's deception compressed into a single moment of accountability as the audience absorbed a truth hidden by rank and classification. Heroism denied, not because it did not exist, but because acknowledging it would have revealed failure at higher levels. How many other truths had been sacrificed for one man's career advancement? General Westmore attempted one final defense, grasping at the procedural authority that had protected him for a decade. Operational decisions are often simplified in hindsight, Admiral. The full context of battlefield command cannot be captured in documentation alone. The context was 36 operators stranded when your intelligence assessment proved catastrophically wrong, Hemlock interrupted, her voice still controlled, but carrying new authority. The context was your direct order to abandon them, rather than risk a failed extraction appearing on your record. The context was choosing between your career and their lives. The auditorium lights seemed to intensify, harsh illumination exposing every reaction, leaving no shadows for concealment. The symbolic motif transformed. What had begun as a contrast between weathered service and pristine appearance now shifted to reveal truth versus deception under unforgiving light. Phantom Team was given a choice, Hemlock continued, speaking not in anger but with quiet precision. Follow orders and return to base, or attempt extraction against command directive. We chose the operators over the orders. All 4 Phantom pilots agreed unanimously. She paused, allowing the weight of the decision to register with everyone present. The extraction succeeded. 36 operators returned home to their families. The cost was 4 aircraft, 3 pilots, and my military career. The mathematical clarity left no room for interpretation or excuse. Lives saved at devastating personal cost, while the person responsible for the initial failure advanced through ranks partially built on their sacrifice. Admiral Thorne continued with documentation, each statement another brick in the wall of evidence. Commander Hemlock's helicopter took catastrophic damage on final approach, emergency landing inside hostile territory. Despite severe injuries, she maintained defensive position for 14 hours until secondary extraction arrived. She flipped to another page. Upon return, she was immediately separated from service under classified directive. Official record modified to show administrative discharge rather than combat injury. All recommendations for commendation denied by direct intervention of then Colonel Westmore. The paper trail was damning in its bureaucratic thoroughness, every form and signature creating an unassailable record of systematic erasure. Westmore's aide leaned closer, whispering urgently, "Sir, we should request a private discussion before this escalates further." Westmore ignored him, the bias that had begun as condescension now hardening into overt hostility. These documents are being presented without proper context and verification. This appears to be a coordinated attempt to undermine command authority. His accusation hung in the air, the tension escalating with each word. One mystery was now resolved. Hemlock had been deliberately erased from military record after extraordinary heroism because her actions exposed a command failure. But 2 new questions formed. How had this cover-up been maintained for a decade despite dozens of witnesses? And why had it all surfaced today at this particular ceremony? Throughout the confrontation, Hemlock maintained the same quiet competence that had evidently characterized her service. No dramatic gestures, no raised voice, simply presenting truth with the same precision she had once applied to impossible extractions. Master Chief Rourke stepped forward, addressing Hemlock directly. "On behalf of SEAL Team 8, we acknowledge the debt we can never repay." The simple statement carried the weight of decades of silent knowledge, of honors accepted while knowing who had truly earned them. Rourke turned to face Westmore. "We have honored your order to remain silent for 10 years, sir. That ends today." He turned back to Hemlock. "Permission to render appropriate recognition, Commander." She responded with an almost imperceptible nod, dignity in the simple gesture of acceptance. The auditorium's atmosphere shifted again, urgency giving way to ceremonial stillness as Rourke's voice cut through the tension. "Attention to orders." Every SEAL in the auditorium snapped to perfect formation, saluting as one, not just acknowledgement, but formal military honor, the highest gesture of respect one warrior can offer another. Westmore stood alone now, authority stripped away not by command, but by moral truth. The visual contrast could not have been more striking. One general without support versus one forgotten officer receiving honors from the elite operators she had saved. After holding the salute for a full count, Rourke called, "Order arms." The SEALs returned to position with perfect synchronization, discipline honoring discipline. Westmore's aide tried again. "Sir, we need to regain control of this situation before—" "Silence!" Westmore snapped, his composure cracking further. "This entire display is unauthorized and inappropriate." He turned to address the assembled witnesses directly. What you are witnessing is a gross violation of chain of command and classified information protocols. There will be consequences for everyone involved. The threat landed with leaden weight, but not a single SEAL moved or reacted. The balance of power had shifted irrevocably. Senior Chief Cade stepped forward, adding another layer to the unfolding revelation. Lieutenant Commander Hemlock was not just our extraction pilot, she was the most decorated member of Phantom Squadron, with 12 confirmed successful missions in denied airspace before Darzastan. And what happened to the rest of Phantom Squadron? Someone asked from the audience. Hemlock answered, her voice carrying no accusation, just factual precision. Lieutenant Asher Dalton, killed during the third extraction run. Chief Warrant Officer Thalia Knox, aircraft lost over hostile territory during the second run. Lieutenant Commander Orion Blackwood died of injuries 3 days after mission completion. The auditorium's previously perfect climate control seemed to falter, the air growing somehow heavier, colder, the building itself reacting to revelations it had not been designed to contain. I was the only survivor, Hemlock continued, and upon my return, I was immediately debriefed, hospitalized, then processed for discharge while still undergoing burn treatment. Admiral Thorne produced another document from her folder. Medical evaluation dated 3 weeks after Darzastan. Recommendation for continued treatment. Denied by Colonel Westmore, citing administrative priorities. The pressure on Westmore intensified with each new revelation, his space for maneuver diminishing as evidence mounted. Those were standard protocols for classified operations with compromised outcomes, he insisted. There was nothing standard about this situation, General, Admiral Thorne countered. The outcome was 36 lives saved at the cost of 4 aircraft and 3 pilots. That is not a compromise. It is a painful but acceptable tactical exchange. Then why the cover-up? Cade asked, the question directed at Thorne rather than Westmore. Thorne's gaze shifted from Cade to Hemlock, then settled on Westmore. That senior chief is precisely what today's disclosure will determine. For several heartbeats, complete silence filled the auditorium, the rhythm shifting again from confrontational urgency to anticipatory stillness. Everyone sensed a turning point approaching, though its exact nature remained unclear. The silent, high-tension turning point arrived as Westmore made a calculated decision. Rather than continuing defense against mounting evidence, he shifted to counterattack. Commander Hemlock's actions in Darzastan, while ultimately successful, came at tremendous cost. Cost that could have been avoided had she followed direct orders from the Tactical Operations Center. He stepped toward her, attempting to reclaim physical dominance in the space. She deliberately violated the chain of command, endangered additional aircraft and crews, and created a situation that resulted in 3 deaths that would not otherwise have occurred. The accusation was strategically brilliant, inverting the entire narrative. Not a hero denied recognition, but a rogue officer whose insubordination had cost lives. "Is that your official position, General?" Admiral Thorne asked quietly. "It is the factual assessment based on complete operational data," Westmore replied, confidence returning to his voice as he found solid ground for his defense. "I see." Thorne turned to her aide. "Please bring in the remaining witness." The auditorium doors opened and a wheelchair entered, pushed by a naval corpsman. In it sat an older man in civilian clothes, his military background evident despite the absence of uniform. His legs ended above the knees, and severe scarring marked what was visible of his hands and face. "Chief Warrant Officer Knox," Admiral Thorne announced. "Phantom Team co-pilot, second extraction run." The factual shock rippled through the audience. One of the pilots Hemlock had just listed as killed in action was very much alive, though grievously injured. Hemlock froze, color draining from her face as she stared at the man she had believed dead for a decade. "Thalia?" she whispered, using the first name that matched service records rather than the person now before her. "Hello, Commander," Knox replied, voice raspy but clear. "It has been a while." "You were reported killed in action," Hemlock said, disbelief evident in her voice. "Your aircraft was confirmed lost with no survivors." "My aircraft was indeed lost," Knox confirmed, "but I was recovered by local forces 3 days after the mission and eventually repatriated through unofficial channels. Upon return, I was classified, hospitalized, then directed to maintain complete silence regarding my survival and service history." "Directed by whom?" Thorne asked, though the answer was already becoming clear to everyone present. Knox's gaze fixed on Westmore. By Colonel Thaddeus Westmore, who explained that operational security required my official death and permanent separation from military documentation. That is enough, Westmore interrupted. Chief Warrant Officer Knox's status remains classified, despite Admiral Thorne's irregular declassification orders. Actually, General, Knox replied calmly, my status was declassified this morning, along with Operation Shadowfall, which means I am free to provide testimony regarding all aspects of the operation, including post-mission directives. For the first time, genuine fear flickered across Westmore's expression, quickly suppressed, but noted by everyone watching closely. Whatever Knox knew clearly went beyond the evidence already presented. Chief Warrant Officer Knox, Admiral Thorne said formally, please state for the record why you were directed to maintain silence about your survival. Knox wheeled himself closer to the center of the auditorium. Colonel Westmore explained that acknowledging my survival would necessitate complete mission disclosure, including the fact that he had personally authorized the diversion of our primary extraction team into unsecured airspace without proper intelligence support. He paused, gathering himself before continuing. This unauthorized diversion resulted in the loss of our primary extraction helicopter with all hands. When Commander Hemlock proposed an alternative extraction plan, Colonel Westmore denied authorization, specifically citing potential career implications if a second mission failed. The auditorium seemed to hold its collective breath as Knox delivered the final, devastating revelation. After our successful extraction of all 36 operators, Colonel Westmore visited me in the hospital. He informed me that a thorough investigation would damage the Navy's standing with congressional oversight committees and potentially reduce special operations funding. Knox looked directly at Westmore. He then offered me a choice: maintain official killed-in-action status with generous financial support from my family, or face court-martial for participation in an unauthorized extraction operation that resulted in loss of military aircraft. The sensory shock of this final revelation left the auditorium in stunned silence, not just a cover-up to protect a career, but active coercion of an injured pilot, forcing him to choose between family security and truth. Westmore stood, paralyzed, the complete collapse of his narrative evident in his rigid posture and unfocused gaze. Everything he had built over a decade of calculated career advancement now lay in ruins, exposed by the very people he had attempted to erase. The auditorium erupted into a flurry of voices as Westmore's decade of deception collapsed. Military officers exchanged shocked glances while the SEALs remained at parade rest, their stillness a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding around them. The symbolic motif reached its visual peak, truth fully illuminated, leaving nowhere for carefully constructed falsehood to hide. Knox, Hemlock whispered, moving toward the wheelchair with measured steps. I attended your memorial service, your wife, your children. My family was informed of my survival 6 months after the operation, Knox explained. They were required to sign non-disclosure agreements and instructed to maintain the fiction of my death in all public settings. Hemlock knelt beside his wheelchair, military formality momentarily set aside. And Lieutenant Dalton? Commander Blackwood? Dalton did not survive, Knox confirmed quietly. Blackwood died of his injuries 3 days after the mission, as reported. Admiral Thorne stepped forward, reclaiming control of the proceedings. General Westmore, in light of this testimony and the declassified documentation, do you wish to amend your previous statements? Westmore stood motionless, his authority evaporating with each passing second. His aide tugged urgently at his sleeve, whispering something that finally penetrated his frozen state. I request a formal inquiry with appropriate representation present, Westmore managed, his voice stripped of its earlier confidence. That is your right, Thorne acknowledged. However, this ceremony was intended to honor exceptional service. That purpose remains valid, regardless of what follows administratively. She turned to address the room at large. We will proceed with recognition of all personnel involved in Operation Shadowfall, as originally recommended before improper intervention. She gestured to an aide who approached carrying a polished wooden box. Lieutenant Commander Briar Hemlock, in recognition of valor beyond the call of duty during Operation Shadowfall, the Secretary of the Navy has authorized presentation of the Navy Cross. The twist reveal unfolded as a public restoration of honor, the ceremony transforming from standard military pageantry into something more profound. Justice delayed, but finally delivered. Those in attendance witnessed not just recognition of past heroism, but correction of deliberate historical erasure. The citation reads, "For extraordinary heroism while serving as Phantom Team Leader during Operation Shadowfall." When primary extraction was compromised, Commander Hemlock volunteered for a mission designated high risk, executing 3 consecutive extractions under sustained enemy fire, resulting in the successful recovery. Of 36 special operators, Thorne removed the medal from its case, presenting it to Hemlock with formal precision. "The nation honors your service, Commander." Hemlock accepted the medal with the same quiet dignity that had characterized her throughout the confrontation. "I accept this on behalf of all Phantom team members, Admiral. The honor belongs equally to those who did not return." The power reversal completed itself not through dramatic confrontation, but through simple truth acknowledged. Westmore, who had opened the ceremony with absolute command authority, now stood isolated, his career effectively ended not by accusation, but by his own documented actions. Westmore recognized the inevitable, shoulders finally slumping in acceptance. With slow, deliberate movements, he removed his own service ribbons, placing them on the podium. Symbolic surrender of authority he had failed to honor. "I tender my resignation, effective immediately," he stated simply. No grand speech, no justification, just acceptance of consequences long delayed. The power of the moment lay in its restraint, truth needing no embellishment beyond its simple existence. Chief Warrant Officer Knox wheeled himself forward. "Commander, there is something else you should know." He reached into his jacket, removing a folded document. "After I was recovered, I was transported to a secure medical facility where I underwent 17 surgeries. During my 3rd week there, an intelligence officer recorded my account of the extraction operation." Knox unfolded the paper carefully. "This is the original Medal of Honor recommendation, signed by every member of SEAL Team 8 who was extracted that day. It contains 36 signatures, including Senior Chief Cade's." Hemlock accepted the document with visible emotion, finally breaking through her composed exterior. "You kept this? All these years?" "Some truth cannot be buried, Commander, only delayed," Knox replied. "We knew someday the record would be corrected." The chaos of revelation began settling into calm understanding as the full picture emerged. The ceremony that had begun with planned recognition for selected individuals expanded to encompass a broader, deeper acknowledgement of service and sacrifice. Admiral Thorne addressed the assembled witnesses. "What you have observed today extends beyond a single operation or individual heroism. It represents our institutional responsibility to honor truth, even when that truth is uncomfortable for those in positions of authority." She turned to the SEALs still standing at parade rest. "The oath each of us took was not to protect careers or reputations, but to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies. That oath includes the obligation to maintain the honor of our service through honest accounting of both our successes and our failures." The emotional clarity that emerged from chaos was not triumph, but restoration, of fact, of reputation, of the proper relationship between service and recognition. Senior Chief Cade stepped forward again. "Commander, there is one final matter that requires disclosure." "Proceed, Senior Chief," Thorne authorized. "Commander Hemlock was not invited here today," he explained to the assembled witnesses. "She was ordered to attend, by us." He gestured to the SEALs around him. "Every operator in this room signed the request. We knew the truth would only emerge if she stood before the man who buried it." Looking directly at Westmore's retreating figure, he added, "Your signature on the attendance directive was forged, sir. We needed you both here, with witnesses who would understand the significance." The orchestration was revealed, just as planned patiently over years, waiting for precisely the right moment and proper audience to ensure the truth could not be buried again. As military police escorted Westmore from the auditorium, the formal ceremony dissolved. Small groups formed as SEALs approached Hemlock individually. No grand celebrations, just quiet acknowledgments between warriors who understood the true weight of service and sacrifice. Admiral Thorne oversaw the transition, documents spread across a conference table in a side room. This will require significant official correction, she noted, indicating the extensive redactions and alterations that had buried the truth. Personnel records, unit histories, medal citations. The truth is sufficient, Admiral, Hemlock responded simply. The rest is just paperwork. Later, alone with Cade in a quiet corner of the building, the personal cost of her silence became clear. You did not have to stay silent for 10 years, he told her. Any one of us would have spoken up. Hemlock's response revealed the deeper character that had led her to risk everything in Darzastan. At what cost to your careers? The mission succeeded. That was enough. But the truth matters, Cade insisted. Your sacrifice deserved recognition. Recognition was not the point, Evander, she replied. Getting all of you home was. The essence of her character distilled into that single statement. Duty transcending personal glory. Service extending beyond recognition. Values maintained even when systems failed to uphold them. 1 month later, a small private ceremony was held at the Naval Special Warfare Memorial. A new section was dedicated to Phantom Team, names of fallen pilots finally carved in stone after years of official absence. Hemlock touched each name, personal connection to each sacrifice evident in her careful movements. Lieutenant Asher Dalton, Lieutenant Commander Orion Blackwood. Her fingers traced the precisely etched letters, honoring colleagues whose sacrifice had been officially acknowledged at last. Her voice carried both loss and pride as she spoke to the gathered SEALs. They never asked if the mission was possible, only what needed to be done. Knox, seated in his wheelchair beside her, added quietly, and they would have made the same choice again, knowing the outcome. The focus remained not on survival, but on honoring those who did not return, the true measure of military service revealed in how the living remember the fallen. At the Naval Special Warfare Training Facility, a new class of pilots received instruction that included a recently added case study. The instructor referenced the Hemlock Protocol for extraction priorities. The mission succeeded not because the pilots followed orders, he explained to attentive students, but because they followed something higher. When protocol and human life conflict, Hemlock chose human life, at personal cost. Her name, once deliberately hidden from official record, had transformed from secret to teaching example. The ultimate redemption came not through medals belatedly awarded, but through her actions defining doctrine rather than being erased by it. Years later, a Naval Special Warfare training course presented candidates with an ethical scenario: orders versus moral clarity. The instructor challenged them. What is the correct action when legitimate authority conflicts with clear moral duty? After careful consideration, a young candidate answered, "The Hemlock standard, sir. Protect the lives even if it costs you everything else." The instructor nodded approval. Some decisions are not found in manuals. They are found in character. In the classroom, the walls once adorned with standard military photographs had been updated. Among the historical images hung a newly added picture: 4 helicopter pilots standing before their aircraft, Phantom Team in their final formation before Darzastan. Hemlock stood among them, all 4 pilots captured in a moment of calm professionalism before the mission that would define their legacy. The Naval Special Warfare Command Auditorium, where the truth had finally emerged, hosted another ceremony. The same flags hung in precise formation, the same polished surfaces reflected overhead lights. But something fundamental had changed. The space that had witnessed the confrontation between authority and truth now served as setting for a different kind of recognition. Admiral Thorne, now retired but present in civilian attire, observed as Chief Warrant Officer Knox received long-delayed recognition for his service. Hemlock stood beside him, their shared experience creating a bond that transcended standard military relationships. After the formal presentations concluded, Knox turned to Hemlock. Was it worth it? The wait, the silence, finally getting the record straight. She considered the question with characteristic thoughtfulness. The recognition changes nothing about what happened. The mission succeeded. Lives were saved. That is not what I asked, Knox pressed gently. Hemlock glanced around the auditorium, seeing the same space where she had once stood, alone, facing dismissal and contempt. Truth matters, Thalia. Not for medals or recognition, but because without it, we lose the foundation of what we claim to serve. Knox nodded, understanding the layers beneath her simple statement. And General Westmore? His choice was made a decade ago, she replied without bitterness, as was ours. The moral resonance of her response echoed the core truth that had emerged from the confrontation. Systems may fail, individuals may abuse authority, but individual integrity ultimately sustains the values those systems claim to uphold. The final image that lingered came at Arlington National Cemetery, Section 60, where combat veterans rest. Hemlock knelt before the marker for Lieutenant Asher Dalton, recently updated to accurately reflect his service and sacrifice. She placed the Navy Cross medal against the stone, her weathered hand resting briefly on the cold marble. No photographers captured the moment. No official ceremony marked the gesture, just a quiet acknowledgement between warriors. The medal she had accepted on behalf of all returned to where she believed it truly belonged. The sun caught the medal as she rose, creating a momentary flash of light against the white stone. Truth finally illuminating a sacrifice too long hidden in institutional shadow. Have you ever known someone who stood for what was right when standing alone meant certain sacrifice? Someone who never sought the spotlight, but whose quiet integrity changed lives forever? The heroes we remember most are not always those with the most medals or the loudest acclaim, but the ones who did what was necessary when no one was watching, who chose others' well-being over their own advancement.